Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. An Israeli Tel Aviv municipal worker sustained fatal wounds in yet another terror attack claimed by the Iranian proxy Palestinian Islamic Jihad. At least 4 Syrian troops were killed and a dozen others sustained wounds in an alleged Israeli bombardment on Iranian targets near Damascus. Thousands of U.S. Marines and other forces arrive in the Middle East amid rising tensions between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Terror once again reared its ugly head over the weekend when an armed Palestinian operative belonging to the Iranian proxy Palestinian Islamic Jihad managed to make his way from the town of Jenin in northern Samaria all the way to the central city of Tel Aviv undetected. Upon arrival in the bustling Montefiore-Binyamin intersection, 2 municipality security patrolmen identified the assailant and moved in to inspect him.
My partner and I drove on Allenby Street and turned left on Montefiore Street, where we identified a suspicious man standing next to the wife bar on the Montefiore-Binyamin intersection. When he saw us, as we drove up on motorcycles with sirens blaring, he refrained from making eye contact, which rose our suspicion further. We made a U-turn on the pavement. My partner was first, and I was right behind him with my motorcycle. You were with 2 motorcycles? Yes. 2 separate motorcycles. My partner opted to park his motorcycle when the suspect drew a gun behind his back and started firing at my partner. I immediately drew my firearm and opened fire toward him. 2 bullets were fired at me, but missed. I ran after him on foot, during which I continued to fire on the terrorist until he drops to the ground, during which his gun dropped on the ground. At this stage, I ceased fire and stood next to him with my firearm pointed at him to thwart his movement and called in additional forces to treat my partner.
After the dust settled, the international spokesman for Israel's national police highlighted that the vigilance of the 2 security patrolmen effectively thwarted what could have turned into a massacre.
And what happened today is a major terrorist attack was thwarted by the vigilance of 2 municipality workers who were in the area here in the heart of Tel Aviv. They identified a suspicious individual, and as they approached him, he opened fire at point-blank range, injuring one of the municipality officers, who was sent right now to Ichilov Hospital for treatment in critical condition.
Regrettably, the wounded Israeli security patrolman, who was later identified as 42 years old, Chen Amir, succumbed to his wounds. He is survived by his wife and 3 daughters.
You were a national hero who sacrificed his life for others.
Meanwhile, IDF, ISA, and Border Police Special Operations Forces conducted extensive counter-terror activities throughout the West Bank districts of Judea and Samaria overnight, during the course of which 17 suspected terror operatives were successfully apprehended. Earlier, at approximately 5:30 yesterday evening, precise intelligence directed special operators of the Amam unit to intercept a Palestinian Islamic Jihad cell that was spotted in transit near the town of Jenin, aiming to perpetrate an attack against Israelis. The Israeli force engaged the cell, during the course of which the 3 terror operatives were eliminated. Subsequently, at the Amam unit's headquarters, Police General Commissioner Yaakov Shabtai praised the special operators for their professional conduct that once again prevented terrorists from fulfilling their murderous aspirations.
The cell which you eliminated was one of the heaviest cells that operated in the Jenin area of operations. They were on their way to perpetrate an attack and have been involved in additional attacks. Here we were successful because of our collaborations, which produced precise intelligence and precise preparation, and therefore we operated in a professional, precise, and clean manner without any casualties on our side. The target was eliminated. The people of Israel owe you much.
Turning to Israel's northern neighbor Syria, where at least 4 Syrian soldiers were killed and a dozen others sustained wounds, when at approximately 2:20 a.m. overnight, missiles penetrated Syrian airspace and struck multiple targets in the vicinity of the capital Damascus. The incoming projectiles were said to have had originated in the Golan Heights, which drew Syria to conclude that Israel was behind the attack. Moreover, according to the London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the destroyed targets include several positions, hosting warehouses and military posts of Iranian-backed militias in the vicinity of the area of Damascus International Airport, the area of Dimas Airport, and the surrounding areas of Al-Kiswa, west of Damascus City. And while Syria's aerial defense array was triggered in an attempt to intercept the incoming projectiles, all of the intended targets reportedly sustained devastating blows. Meanwhile, in spite of Syria pointing a blaming finger at Israel, the IDF spokesperson's unit did not confirm or deny its alleged involvement in response to TV7's request for comment. In other news, amid heightened regional tensions versus the Islamic Republic of Iran, U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, Ronald Moultrie, led a senior American delegation which included Director of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, Lieutenant General Scott Berrier, and other senior Pentagon officials on an official visit to Israel. During the 4-day visit, Undersecretary Moultrie and his delegation met with Israeli Ministry of Defense Political Military Director Dror Shalom and other key ministry officials, alongside senior officers from the IDF's Intelligence Directorate, to discuss enhanced U.S.-Israel bilateral cooperation for greater regional security. The senior American delegation said it gained first-hand key insights into the challenges faced by Israel, while adding that the discussions focused on Hezbollah's threat, efforts to counter Iran's destabilizing activities across the region, and explored avenues to further strengthen bilateral intelligence and defense cooperation. Towards the end of the visit, Undersecretary Moultrie thanked his Israeli hosts and reaffirmed the shared U.S.-Israeli commitment to countering all destabilizing activities that threaten regional security, and also stressed mutual interest in strengthening the U.S.-Israel defense and intelligence partnership. It is important to know that while Israel and the United States are openly collaborating on shared security interests in the region, the U.S. is effectively bolstering its presence in the Persian Gulf to counter Iran's malign behavior. While the Pentagon initially confirmed that the new force includes an amphibious readiness group and a marine expeditionary unit, which typically consists of 3 vessels and approximately 2,400 Marines, the U.S. Marine Corps Forces Central Command announced earlier today that more than 3,000 U.S. Navy and U.S. Marine Corps troops of the Bataan Amphibious Readiness Group and the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit arrived in the Middle East as part of the pre-announced Department of Defense deployment. Meanwhile, U.S. Central Command Commander General Michael Kurilla said that the forces would add unique capabilities to the region in order to further safeguard the free flow of international commerce and uphold the rules-based international order. Meanwhile, in the Persian Gulf proper, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps Navy held a maritime exercise on Saturday, during which it tested its newly equipped drones and Al-Mahdi missiles, which are said to have a range of roughly 1,000 kilometers or 600 miles. Revolutionary Guards Navy Commander Ali Reza Tangsiri claimed in a televised interview that the new missiles had better precision with the capacity of altering targets mid-air.
These missiles can follow multiple targets, accept commands when they are launched, and change their target along their way.
It is important to highlight that statements coming out of Iran, including announcements of newly deployed weaponry, clearly indicate rising concerns in the Islamic Republic proper in relation to the latest U.S. military deployments. In other yet related news, a Middle East Institute essay warns that as Israel grapples with fundamental questions of identity and societal fissures years in the making, its enemies have been gleefully watching. Weekly scenes of street protests and signs of deep societal division reinforce the narrative long advanced by Iran and its so-called axis of resistance that the Jewish state is living on borrowed time. To exploit this situation, they continue, per the essay, to employ their escalation-ready, approach of pushing the envelope in multiple geographic theaters, launching cyber operations to foment disunity in Israeli society, and attempting to neutralize the regional gains Israel has made after signing the Abraham Accords with several Arab neighbors in 2020. And while the Israeli defense establishment has repeatedly warned that a growing number of Israelis serving in voluntary capacity and who've threatened to hold their service unless the government ceases its legislative bid to reform the judiciary, would undoubtedly threaten Israel's military preparedness to contend with accumulating regional threats. Nevertheless, resolutely convinced that the incumbent government's move aims to weaken Israel's democracy, tens of thousands of Israelis have once again flooded the streets of Tel Aviv in protest for the 33rd consecutive week.
We are going to continue until they will stop, the government will stop the law revolution, I would say, that they are trying to do. And at the end, the people will win, and Israel will come back to be a liberal, free country with the democracy, and this is all. We are not going to give up until we win.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. Separately, I would like to continue encouraging you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. Jonathan Essen wishing you Shavua Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time.